Okay, what is our theme? Who is an observant person in this room? What is the theme of our camp meeting? Oh, guys, I don't see any FBI agents coming out of this room. Okay, how about you? The goodness of God, that's for the theme song. It's in the goodness of God. It's about something. Starts with an L, ends with an E. Love. Whose love? God's love. Okay, we're talking about God's love this week. Now, that's a really broad topic, and Mr. Winslow, who knows Mr. Winslow in here? Who knows Miss Tammy? Who knows Mr. Charlie? Okay, well, who knows Eden? Who knows who Eden is? Okay, the 5 of us were in a meeting when I was in Colorado, Eden was in Montana, and I believe they were in Alaska, and we were on a Zoom meeting. And Mr. Winslow was saying, okay, guys, what are we trying to narrow this down to? Can I read you my notes I took from that meeting? He says, in this camp meeting, we want to try to portray how God loves them, you guys, how God loves them, and how to love him back, right? Is that correct, Mr. Winslow? Okay. And then how to feel God's love when you don't feel it, when you don't what? Oh, guys, FBI agents are really going down in the world. Okay, how to feel God's love when you don't what? Feel it, okay. Or when you haven't felt it in a while. Or when you haven't what? Felt it in a while. Okay. How to feel God's love when you haven't felt it in a while or don't feel it. Okay. And then Mr. Charlie gave this advice. He said, be real, risk it, and be real. It'll help them accept you. Mr. Winslow popped up and he said, don't hide accomplishments, but be very humble and show Jesus. So I'm going to try to incorporate that advice from many years of living and wisdom and try to incorporate it into today. Now I'm going to start my timer and I will end at 30 minutes. Is 30 minutes okay?
Whoa.
Yeah? Should I do 40 instead or 30?
45! Yes.
40?
Yes.
40. Well, thank you for that. Well, okay. All right, so I'm going to not tell my personal testimony right up front. I was going to, but I'm going to start with someone else's that's very powerful and end it with a story from my life. Who here has heard of a lady named Marie Durand? Marie Durand. Well, before I do, here's a slide I had, a little bit about me. This is my family. My father, my mother. My father was born in Walla Walla, Washington. My mother was born in Myanmar. And so she's fully 100% Chinese. My father is half German and a lot of other things that created a white man. And so there is me. My school, I guess you could say major profession I'm trying to work towards is to become a pilot. And so that's a picture from one of my trips of flying out in a Cessna 172. And then this is my goat that I'm very good friends with, named Cyrus. He's a Nigerian dwarf. Anyone have a goat here?
I had 4.
You had 4. Anyone else had goats? Yes, you had a Nigerian.
We had 3, but we left them with my grandmother when we came up to Alaska.
Oh, I see. Do you miss them sometimes?
Yeah.
Yeah? I do. I see one more person has a goat somewhere. You had a goat?
I had to take care of hers.
Oh, see, I guess they're technically your goats. So I have a poodle. That's Peaches, my newest poodle. That's kind of my dad's, not mine. She loves him more than she loves me. And then that's my dog Shade and Shadow and my horse Breeze. So that's a little bit about my family back at home in Montana. Well, this story is about Marie Durand, and here you see her as an old lady, but she started out, and this story is very significant, at the age of 18 years old. Anyone 18 here? 18? One 18-year-old? 2? No, not 18. Okay. How old are you? 60? 15? 16. Okay, you guys are close enough. All right, so true love. I'm going to look at the ladies now. I feel this more applies to them, maybe I'm wrong. But when you read a novel or a book, ladies, what is usually, or a Cinderella movie, what is the last 3 words? and they lived happily ever after. Do we like that? Yeah? I think we secretly inside somewhere want that happily ever after story. And so you think about in your mind of, we are troubled and that there's a damsel in distress, and she's there and she needs a hero, and one of you guys show up with your dashing armor and sweeps her off her feet and go, I'm here to save you. And then we go, what? Thank you so much for saving me. That is the happily ever after story that connects the two. But what if that doesn't happen? What if you guys don't come in time and she dies? Is that still a happily ever after? You think so? Well, I want to go with you to her story. Marie Durand was born in 1712. When? 1712. She was a French Protestant in France and born in the Vivarais region of southeast France. The Durand family maintained their faith very secretly because it was illegal to be a Protestant. The reason it was illegal back then is because they had made a law that the only person you could worship was the government. And the king was supposed to be the head of the church, but they believed that the king could not be a head of the church with his wicked ways. And so she stood firm, and her family was trying to stand firm that no, the king indeed was not the person of the church, but that was only Jesus and Jesus Christ that could be the king. And so, little by little, France picked her family apart. Now, I want you to put yourself in this position and see, could you handle what Marie Durand handled in her life? In her life, this is what happened. Her father organized secret Protestant revival meetings in his home. And her mother, during one of these meetings, was arrested and taken to prison. She never came back. And her mother died in prison. Years later, her brother, Born, was also a very gifted preacher. And so he would preach in these meetings, and they came to their house, took him, and shot him. Then, her father, who was also in another meeting, they took him to prison. It was Marie left now. And finally, she found someone to accompany her with life, and she was 18-year-old, and she got engaged to a man named Matthew Sever. And shortly after they were married, who did they take? Her husband. Everyone was taken, and soon she found herself taken to a tower. Marie was 18 years old, and as she realized her family was either dead, her father was in prison, her fiancé gone, and her husband gone, she alone was there. What did she do? She walked into this tower, this is exactly the place where her fiancé was, I keep saying fiancé, but her husband, who she married, was taken to. It's called Versailles Castle, and it's literally an island that's still there, and he was taken there, and they never saw each other again. But this is where Marie Durand was taken. Now, it's cleaned up a lot because of tourists, but it did not look that pretty inside of that room. I'm sure after you will hear the story, you'll understand why. But she was taken into this room. It's a circular room, and there she was from 18 years old. On top of the tower, on the door, was the inscription, "All hope abandon, ye who enter." What was it? All hope abandon, ye who enter. Why do you think it was inscribed on the door? Because of, huh?
Hope dies here.
Hope dies here. Why does hope die there? It's like a mousetrap. What happens once you get in? You can't get back out. There she stayed for how many years? She was 18 when she went in. For 38 years, she lived in that circle stone room. many of you could be locked in a stone room for 38 years? Let's just say this room right here. We covered all the walls, and for the next 38 years, Mr. Winslow said, you guys can't leave.
I'll just slam my head again. Run out.
Without technology, too.
Without technology. She was stuck for 38 years. Every single day, she had the opportunity for the next 38 years to say, I changed my mind. I want to go see the outside world. I want to go smell fresh air. Let me out. I promise I will worship the way you want me to worship, the way everyone else worships. And they would have opened that door and said, you're free to leave. But did she do that? She did not do that. For 38 years, her best years, your years of life, she stayed because of a conviction within her heart. It was a very strong conviction. In fact, there were other women in that room with her, and she was the one who kept them going and said, don't lose your faith. Don't say, I give Jesus up because I want the freedom of this world. She wrote letters and tried to get them out, but nothing worked. She managed to get a letter out to ask for the book of Psalms for each woman in there so that they could read a little bit of the Bible to keep their hearts steadfast. Now, can I be real with you guys? Like, just really raw. I think you guys are old enough. We're close enough in age. How can you expect you to stay faithful to God when all things go wrong if you can't stay faithful to Him today? You can't. Can you? No, you can't. How can you say, my anchor will hold when it's not holding today in the small things? Music. Let me go through this list. And this list is, I think, relevant for our age and relevant for our day. I love music. In fact, this phone is always working and playing something. Usually music is always going. I run at night, and I used to be really stressed, and that was my way to de-stress myself or clear my mind. Is I live in Montana on this long country dirt strip of road where there's dairy farms on both sides, so there's cows on both sides, horses and animals, and just a dirt road and a big blue sky. And I'll turn my phone on, I'll hit my playlist, I'll start it, I'll put my earbuds on, and I will just run and run and run until I don't think of anything, and I feel like my brain is clearing, and then I'll turn around at my mark, 1.5 mile mark, and then I'll run back home. And I realized once you do something so often, subconsciously you aren't even listening to the music anymore. Have you guys realized that? You just turn it on and you run, and the words you don't process them. And I started adding music to my playlist that started getting a little bit, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. It was words that, it's not something you would play at church, but it wasn't something that was like evil or anything like that. And then my friends would start sending me playlists and their music items, and I noticed that maybe in the middle of the song there'd be one bad word, but there's only one bad word, and in context people would understand why it was there. Like, did it really matter that much? I liked my playlist, and I liked music, and I liked catchy things. And so that was a struggle for me. Some other people struggle with other things. Like, now, people struggle all over with watching adult content. You guys know that. It's not a secret. It's not usually talked about, but everyone knows about it. That usually most people that you see are at home, and a lot of people are struggling with that. Maybe you are struggling with that. Maybe it's movies that you watch, and you know that movie isn't the best, but your family says it's fine, or maybe they say it's not fine, but you really just don't care. And you can find it on YouTube, and you can find it on Netflix, and it's on Netflix, so it must be okay. Or maybe when you talk with your Christian friends in a Christian manner, but when you talk with your friends that don't really care, you guys talk like whatever, and nothing is off limits. Like your principles of right and wrong behavior, it's like, does it really matter? But does it matter? If you can't control that today, how can you control it 38 years in a tower when there's a door that you want to badly go through and everything inside of you wants to belong in the outside world, and all that's holding you back is one small decision to stay faithful? She knew her identity was in Christ. She knew that Christ loved her. But do you think she felt that love in a little circle all day? Let me tell you. See that hole in the middle? See it? In that top right picture, see that hole?
Looks like a window.
Well, that's in the ground. That's in the ground. There's a hole. And above her was a hole as well, 6 feet. There's one hole in the ceiling, and that's where all the sunshine, the sweltering heat, the rain, and the snow, that's where everything came through. No shield from weather. And that hole you see on the bottom right there is where they used the restroom. All of the women. They went over that hole, and they did their thing. And guess where their supper and lunch and breakfast all came from? That hole. The same hole they used to put everything out is where everything came back in. Does that sound like a very sanitary life? No, it does not. Yet she held. In fact, this sign, if you go and visit this in France, you'll see that around this hole is inscripted. You can tell someone scratched it in day by day, register, which means resist. It means that they were tempted to go out, but every day they believe that Marie Durand scribbled in the rock, resist, resist, do not fall, but resist. You may struggle with music like I do. You may struggle with adult content. You may struggle with movies. You may struggle with your words and your thoughts. But what? Resist. Resist. You may say, Oceana, I don't feel God's love right now. I feel like God is 1,000 miles away, so far from me that he doesn't care what I do, and I don't really care if he does care. But like Marie Durand, when she felt God's presence not there in a room, she scribbled in stone, resist. Her family was gone. Her family was stolen from her. Her health was stolen from her. Her youth was stolen from her. Yet she did not give in, but resisted. In John 14:6, it says, Jesus said unto me, I am the way, the truth, the life. No man cometh unto me but through the Father. It's such a fact that we know that, but sometimes it's hard to believe and to realize that it is only by Jesus, only by his grace can we resist. I'm going to tell you a personal story, and this personal story is about flying. Now, I don't like telling stories about my mistakes because I feel like doctors, when they make mistakes, it's called malpractice, and when pilots make mistakes, we just don't tell people about our mistakes, right? Especially in the air. I remember one time my first solo flight, my second solo flight with my father. I took him to Polson, Montana, where is a beautiful, famous lake called Flathead Lake, where a lot of cherries come from. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a beautiful lake. And friend, I had my father in the right-hand seat. I was flying the aircraft, and as he was next to me, we were getting low, and this was a really weird airport, because here's the lake, and there was this one small road, and then the runway. So you literally had to get low by the lake to land. I never landed so close to water. And I'm sure Alaskans do it all the time, but I was not Alaskan. And so I got low to the ground, to the water, and I felt the ripples of the wind that bounced off the lake. You can feel that turbulence, bam, 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 bam. And the airplane was kind of shaking there, and I look below me, and I'm close to the water. I'm looking at the runway, and I'm like, this is how I always land, but I don't land like this. My heart was going like, it's okay, Oceana, you've got to land one way or another. So I put a straight face on. I was like, I cannot show my dad that I am so nervous right now. But then I pulled the throttle, flaps all went in, car came out, and I landed. But then something else was scarier than that little incident. It was something that I think is probably the most scary thing that's happened in my airplane journey so far. I had a friend in Walla Walla, Washington, and I wanted to go visit her. In my school program, you have to fly a certain distance in a straight line across the ground to count for one of your lessons. And it just proves that you can stay alive, keep the airplane intact, and that you're brave and confident enough to go across states by yourself. So I lived in Montana, she lived in Washington. I got to the airport, and one of my friends from Japan was visiting me. And she was excited to come in the back seat with me, and I had invited another church member who was a pilot to come to ride, as long as I was pilot in command, which is PIC. In other words, anything that happens in the aircraft to the aircraft is in my command. If I say no, everyone says no, right? It's kind of your decision. So my friend from Japan, she sat in the back. The pilot friend from church sat next to me. And so the sun and the sky, you could tell, if you can see right there, the mountains are a little bit blurred, but they're pretty tall mountains. And the sky covering was getting really low to those peaks. And so the ceiling was starting to spread over the valley, but there were still some major holes in the sky where I could fly through and still be safe. And so we talked together, we're like, is it safe to fly across the mountain and in the wilderness when the sky is getting so low, the ceiling's getting low? Well, he's like, well, what do you think? Well, I was like, perhaps it would be fine. We just make our way down the valley, go over the hills instead of the mountains, and figure our way. So we said, oh, it looks good enough. So we all got into the airplane, fueled it up, and then we took off, this runway right here, and we took off into the sky, and so we throttled around, and it was a beautiful day. We're like, oh yeah, it was perfect. We hit Walla Walla, Washington. He goes, hangs out with his friends, and my friend and I met our friend from Walla Walla, and we went out to a Mexican restaurant to go eat. So we're eating at the Mexican restaurant, and my instructor from Hamilton calls me. He says, Oceana, have you checked the weather? I said, yes, I checked, but he's like, check again. So I opened my phone, and there's an app for pilots called ForeFlight. And it shows you the radar above the terrain and everything like that. And I looked, and I see snow squall lines throughout the path going home. And I said, I don't know, should I stay here for the night or should I go? And he said, well, it looks kind of good now, but it looks like it's moving in very fast. And he says, well, Oceana, maybe you should just stay in Walla Walla for the night. And my friend, she said, oh, Oceana, you can stay at my house. We can have you guys, no worries at all, leave tomorrow. So I called this pilot, and this pilot, here's important details, this pilot is IFR rated. Anyone know what IFR rated is?
No.
Instrument flight with R.
I don't know. I just know what it is.
Okay. Okay, it's instrument flight rules, which means he can fly in the clouds legally, and he can fly without seeing anything, just with an instrument panel. I'm not. I have to see the ground. And so he also flies a 210, which is much bigger than a Cessna 172. Yeah? Have you guys seen the 210, bigger aircraft? And so I didn't know this guy very well or very long. I just knew he was a pilot, and he offered to come, and I said, sure. So I called this pilot, and I said, hey, it's looking like the squall lines are getting through. It's not safe to go back home. We'll stay in Walla Walla for the night. You're welcome to stay at our friend's house since you're stranded here too. And he says, no. Come to the airport and we'll talk about it. And he said, just meet me there. So I said, okay. So my friend drove Mire and I to the airport where he was, and he was much older than us, in his 50s, and we got there. And I said, well, my instrument instructor, he called and said it's not safe to go because the squall lines are coming through. And he says, no, it's fine. It's beautiful weather in Hamilton, Montana. I will call my friends and ask them to look out their window and tell you that it's a sunny day. And so I was like, no, it's fine. But he's like, let me just show. Let me call. So he called. Hello? Yes, how's the weather in Hamilton, Montana? And, oh, it's beautiful sunshine. Beautiful sunshine. Oceana, did you hear? It's beautiful sunshine. Don't worry about it. It's beautiful sunshine. And I said, I'm sure that it's beautiful sunshine, but I'm going to call my instructor again to see what he thinks from the weather standpoint at the airport. And my teacher was like, Oceana, the clouds are getting lower and lower. The only reason it shows on the map that it's VFR and legal to fly for you is because only the whole valley has sun, but it is the mountain peaks that are all clouded over. And you can't do that. It's dangerous. And so that guy, the pilot with me, was like, don't listen to your instructor. He's just trying to scare you. You can do it. I need to get home, and I'm serious. We need to leave, Oceana. My dogs are in the house. They're going to pee all over the furniture. We got to go. And I said, no, I'm sorry. My instructor says I shouldn't go. And he's like, Oceana, I need to go home. I have work tomorrow. You need to fly us home. I'll fly us home. And I said, no, I'm the PIC. I have to fly. And him being an adult, this is one thing that I've been learning, to be assertive. I was like, he's an adult. He's older than me. He flies a 210. He's IFR rated, and I'm a new pilot. I am VFR rated, which is lower. Maybe I need to listen to him. And so he says, Oceana, we need to go. Just go pre-flight the airplane. I was so tense inside, knowing that I should stand up for what I knew was right and say, no, I am the pilot in command here. I'm going to go back. You can come back tomorrow and meet us here. But did I do that? No. I gave in. I went over to our airplane, fueled it up, hopped into the airplane, and we flew off. He was saying, oh, it's a beautiful day. Look at this. Sorry if I pressured you into anything. It's like, oh, that's a bit late, We're already off the ground here. But we got into the sky. And once we were into the sky, it was beautiful. And we got closer and closer to the mountains. And as we got closer to this mountain range dividing Washington and Montana apart, you could see squall lines in the sky. And those who don't know squall lines, it looks like streams of water coming out of the sky that don't hit the ground. You can tell it's raining out front. If you look in the mountains, it looks like that, but you're actually at that level. And so we would dive around a squall line, and there would be another squall line, and we'd try to maneuver our way, not hitting any mountains, climbing higher, going around squall lines. And so we kept doing that. And finally, I looked at our map, and we were way off course. We were headed towards Idaho, Salmon, Idaho. And I looked at that. I said, we are going way off course. And he's like, well, I don't know. What do you want to do, Oceana? And I said, I looked around, and I was like, if we go here, we can be trapped off by both squall lines, and this airplane cannot handle ice. 172s cannot handle ice. The wings get iced up, the lift goes, you stall, and then the rest of the story is usually not a happy one. And so I looked around, and squall line, squall line, squall line. We're far from Walla Walla, near the Idaho border here. And I looked into the distance, and I was praying. I was like, God, please get us home. I have my friend from Japan here. I don't want to scare her to death. Thankfully, she was so sick, she just slept the whole time. And so she just slept in the back. And I said, I think out there between those two mountain peaks, I can't tell if it's gray sky or gray clouds. And it looked like that was our only option, so I flew this airplane through around squall lines and straight through, and we couldn't tell where we were exactly, but we just kept dodging the peaks, keep on going into the sky. And finally, it realized that we were near our valley. We went around, got through, and finally found our home. And we landed at the airport. Now, I got to that airport, and I remember the tears in my eyes. They were inside, and I was holding it all together like that time I held it together with my dad, because I was the pilot, and I could not show that I was scared. My friend got out, and the pilot got out, And I walked into that airport, and my teacher met me there, and he looked at me and he said, "What were you doing?" And I said, I know I shouldn't have done it, but I don't know, like, I felt bad to say like no to this guy. He says, "Oceana, that is your responsibility. You are the pilot in command. If you're 16 and he's 50, it doesn't matter because I put you in charge of that aircraft. And no matter what anyone else says, you are in charge of their lives." And I looked and I remember another pilot coming near the instructor of the whole flight school. He said, "Oceana, this is a good lesson for you. Because as you get older, people are going to want you to fly them places. And they're not going to be pilots. And they're going to want to go to the Bahamas. And you see that the weather is not good. But all they think in their mind is, I want to go to the Bahamas." And they'll be like, "Why can't you fly me to the Bahamas right now?" Well, the weather's not good. Well, then move around it, right? But as a pilot, you must decide and walk away and say, no, I am not doing that. And here's a story. Here's a picture of me by the airplane. Actually, the one on the right is the true one. My friend's from Japan next to me, and my friend from Walla Walla when I landed there. But I tell you this story for a reason. And this reason is this. You are going to go through life, and there's going to be pressure. Pressure to do the easiest thing. Pressure to go with the flow because dogs need to be let out. People need jobs because they want to have fun and they think you should be there. Because music that you want to listen to doesn't seem bad enough to delete from your playlist. Because adult content, well, everyone does it in secret. Well, because my family argues, so I should be able to argue with my friends or argue with my mom. Their list goes on. The pressure of society, the pressure of the devil, they are going to be on your back. But what did Durand say? What did she in script? Resist. Resist. If you've made mistakes, use those mistakes to aim for the future. Use them for the future to say, no, I've made mistakes. I've flown when I should not have flown. But I learned a lesson. And in the future, with God's help, I will resist.